Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy, formerly Charting Toward Intimacy, covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. When we watch a game, a sports game of some sort, let's just say football, we are watching the game. We're not playing it. We have no intention of playing it. In that way, we are remaining a spectator at this game. And that's a really good thing. But it becomes a problem if we become the spectator in something that we're actually supposed to be the player in. And that is your sex life. Today, we're going to talk about spectatoring, what it is, how to stop it, and how to become fully present within sex. Welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, the podcast for Catholic women that helps you improve your sex life, strengthen your marriage, and embrace God's design for love. My name is Ellen Holloway, and let's get started. All right, so what is spectatoring? This is when, during sex, you actually mentally step out of your brain and begin monitoring the situation. So it's when you ask yourself those questions of like, oh, how do I look right now? Am I taking too long? Is he enjoying this? Why am I not aroused yet? Why isn't my body responding to this? I really need to hurry up. When we have those kinds of thoughts, we are not present in sex. The brain is running this constant commentary track, like we're spectatoring our own sex life. Our sex life is something to be present in, not to watch. So here's the thing with spectatoring is most women have never heard this term before. When I came across the term for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this explains so much. I just heard the term and didn't even get a definition of it. And I immediately knew what it was and how that was going to help me avoid it in the future, just like by knowing it existed. So hopefully even just the first 3 minutes of this episode has helped you immensely already. So most women we experience this and we think that we're bad at sex and we just can't focus. But it's not that we can't focus. It's that we are allowing ourselves to drop into this mode of spectating instead of being present, playing the game. So your brain it's leaving the experience and it's watching it from the outside. And that obviously is not being present. So spectatoring is not distraction in the general sense, right? So distraction is a thought pops into your head that is maybe completely unrelated. So, oh my gosh, I have got to get the laundry switched over because we need the uniform that's in there for school tomorrow, for soccer practice tomorrow, whatever uniform it is, right? Like that's a distraction. But spectatoring is like, am I doing good enough? Do I look good right now? Am I making the right noises? Is this appropriate for me to be doing? Is he having a good time? Is he enjoying it? Is he wanting me to speed up? Should I speed up? Right? That commentary is not distraction. That is spectatoring. This is super common in women. Pretty much every woman that I have coached or have had in my 8-week program has experienced this to some degree. So spectatoring is very, very common and it's actually very solvable. So why is spectatoring a problem? Arousal requires the brain to feel safe and present. Spectatoring or self-monitoring is essentially what spectatoring is. It activates the part of the brain that's associated with evaluation and judgment. And that is incompatible with safety and arousal, like evaluation and judgment. We can just automatically see how that's incompatible with that. The other thing is your brain literally cannot be in two places at once, but it's trying to be. It's trying to be present in sex and outside of sex, monitoring sex. The brain is watching what's going on, so it can't actually experience it. And so this is where I think a lot of you have told me this phrase of, I want to want this, but I just can't get there. Like in my head, I want to get aroused and I want to enjoy this, but like my body's just not responding. It's because you're trying to feel arousal while simultaneously auditing every single action that you're doing. And you're auditing like whether or not you're feeling aroused, right? So you're trying to get aroused while also asking yourself the question, am I aroused yet? Am I aroused yet? Am I aroused yet? I mean, how many of you guys have a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old, right? Who like constantly when you're driving somewhere is like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How annoying is that? Right? And we can't focus on driving very well. And then we start yelling and, throwing things back there or whatever and being like, oh my gosh, here's just some snacks. Eat them. Please stop talking so that I can focus on driving. Right? Our brain is that 4-year-old in the back seat going, are we aroused yet? Are we aroused yet? Are we aroused yet? Are we aroused yet? No, I'm not aroused yet. Calm down so I can actually get aroused. Right? I mean, just imagine like trying to fall asleep while also monitoring whether you're asleep yet. You would never be able to fall asleep because you'd constantly be thinking, am I asleep yet? And that thought is keeping you from being able to fall asleep. So this is the same thing with arousal, that constant thought of, am I aroused yet? Or why am I not aroused yet? Or does this feel good? Or whatever. It's keeping you from actually being able to be aroused. Spectatoring is the opposite of surrendering. And I talk a lot about how receiving an orgasm is about that full trust and surrender. And so if we're trying to work on our arousal and actually enjoying sex and feeling that sexual pleasure, if we're constantly monitoring our sexual pleasure, we're not actually able to fully surrender and then even be able to receive. Spectatoring is control. It's evaluating. And we can't have those two things together. We can't have control and surrender at the same time. So where does this spectatoring come from? One area is purity culture, because we were taught constantly to, monitor ourselves and make sure we weren't being a distraction for other boys, or, we weren't wearing or doing or saying something that we shouldn't say. And so we got into this habit of constantly monitoring of ourselves, right? Is it okay that I'm doing this? Is it okay that I'm wearing this shirt? Is it okay that I'm talking in this way? Am I coming off too much as a, bad girl here? And that has become a habit, a really ingrained habit, right? And habits don't just die, right? We don't just get married and then the habits of purity culture disappear. Another place that I see this come up is when sex has a history in your own mind of being a performance, or being something that you just give to your husband instead of experiencing yourself, right? So when there's a lot of obligation thoughts around sex, when it's oh, I just have to give this to my husband. He just needs this. It's not for me. Or it's you have to perform the act instead of experience it. So when sex is something that's just for him, you're going to naturally step outside of yourself, right? And you're going to naturally monitor it. And I think if that's the case, right, those thoughts might be much more around I need to speed up. Is he enjoying this? Is he feeling bored? If you're having those kind of thoughts, it might be from this more performative, I just have to give this to him because he needs it, kind of obligation sex side of things. Another place that it can pop up from is shame and body issues. If we are not comfortable in our body, we're going to constantly be monitoring ourselves in sex, because we're oh my gosh, what does my stomach look like here? Oh, is he seeing the cellulite on my thighs when he's kissing it? Oh, I don't know about that. Or, ooh, do I look good, or maybe even worse in this lingerie? Maybe I don't look good in this lingerie, right? That again, that monitoring it pops up in these different places. Another place that it can pop up is when we have a lot of anxiety or fear around whether or not we are following the moral precepts of the church according to sex, right? So if we're really afraid that we're doing something wrong, we are naturally going to step right outside of ourselves and monitor and be oh my gosh, make sure you don't step over the line. Make sure you don't step over the line. Oh my gosh, don't do that. That's sinful. That's sinful, right? If we have a lot of that. And the biggest thing with that is we just need to get really clear on church teaching, because it is very simple. I'm not going to go over it in this episode because there's a lot of podcast episodes about church teaching, but ultimately it's We need to keep the unitive and procreative possibilities present in the act. That's like the biggest thing. And the act needs to always be loving. All right. Another place that it can pop up is if you have had past pain with sex. This is a huge one. Is we'll step out of ourselves because it's more comfortable to step out of ourselves because we've got a lot of fear around sex and we don't want it to hurt. So we're going to step out of ourselves and we're going to be like constantly, not even like as constantly, like so much more constantly monitoring like the level of pain that we have and like whether or not something might hurt. And this can be very, very debilitating for our ability to get aroused. And then another place that I see this show up is for those of us ladies who are trying to learn how to orgasm for the first time, and we become extremely outcome focused and we get a little graspy about the orgasm. I talk a lot about how orgasm is about learning how to receive. But if we get very graspy about it and we get very outcome focused, then we're stepping out of ourselves and we're monitoring for that outcome. Have I achieved it yet? Am I getting aroused? What is my arousal level right now, right? Whenever we're like asking ourselves those questions, we know we're spectatoring. And so it's time to step out of that spectator role and step into the woman who's having sex with her husband and is enjoying it, right? Okay, so it becomes such a vicious cycle, We spectate, then that leads to less arousal, then that leads to more monitoring. Why am I not aroused yet? Why isn't it working? That leads to even less arousal because we're having more monitoring. And then it just like confirms this belief that something is wrong. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with the situation. Something's wrong with my husband. And then that creates like more spectatoring next time because then we're trying to monitor and make sure that nothing goes wrong this time. And we can do this for years and not even realizing that we're doing it. And have you ever seen those old like wagon trails? And there's just these like deep, deep grooves. That's essentially what you've created in your like brain's patterning for sex, is just this pattern of spectatoring, because we've got this very vicious cycle that's just creating even more monitoring every time, right? The wagon rolls over it and we get these deep, deep grooves. We've got these deep grooves in our thought patterns to spectate sex and monitor it and ask ourselves all sorts of questions. So the good news, guys, is that this is a learned habit, which means we can unlearn it. All right. How are we going to do that? Here's what doesn't work. Just telling yourself to relax. That's not going to work. Okay. This is a deep ingrained habit, right? This is a deep wagon wheel well. We've got to do some intentional work, not just try to relax. And the reason why that's not helpful is it doesn't give the brain anything to do instead, right? If we're just like, oh my gosh, just relax, just stop asking these questions. Like, then our brain is like, but what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Okay, so another thing that doesn't work is trying harder, because trying harder creates more monitoring. And also, arousal is something that is received when we are present. More effort is not going to help us receive, right? More effort turns us into kind of this graspy mode, where then it actually becomes very difficult to get aroused because we're trying to grasp at arousal and pleasure. And then the last thing that definitely doesn't work is just like trying to push through, just like hoping it gets better. Like, oh, I'm just going to push the thoughts aside, trying to like muscle through spectatoring. Not going to work. Okay. So what does help? One of the best recommendations that I give for my ladies who are very spectatory, and I use this myself, you guys, like, it's an ingrained habit. It pops up sometimes. No matter how much work I've done, the spectatoring pops up, is I want you to ground yourself in sensory grounding, sensory anchoring. I want you to redirect your attention intentionally to some kind of a physical sensation that's going on. So redirect to, where are my husband's hands right now? What is he doing? What do those hands feel like? Is it warm? Is it cold? Where is he going next, right? Or you could do something yourself and feel it, right? So you could touch your husband's hair and just think about like what that feeling is and how that feels in between your fingers, or if he has long hair, or if he has like short hair, like what that feels like, or if your husband doesn't have hair, right? What his head feels like, or put your hand on his back and what do his muscles feel like? What does his skin feel like? Is it warm? Is it colder? Is it, and like really basically you're just asking the question, what am I actually feeling? Not, am I aroused right now? Is this arousal? What is this feeling? Not trying to name the feeling, just simply what am I actually feeling? What is the temperature? What is the pressure? What does the texture feel like? This gives your brain something to chew on. And that's what we need to do, because your brain, especially if you've been doing this for years, your brain is used to chewing on, right, and having all this spectatoring to do. And so we need to give your brain something to do. And so this is an excellent thing for your brain to do, and it grounds you immediately because it brings you right back in the present moment. You can't be trying to like figure out what the temperature of your, how warm or cold your husband's hands are if you're also spectatoring. Another thing that's just really, really helpful is having this knowledge and just being able to name it when it's happening, right? When you notice that you're asking all these questions, you're like, oh, there's my spectator. I actually don't need you right now. You can go to the side, right? You can take a bench, right? You could give her a name if you wanted to, right? Like, oh, hey, Carol. So sorry for anyone who's named Carol. That was the first name that popped into my head. Hey, Carol, don't need your monitoring right now. You can go and sit on the bench over there. Trying to suppress the spectator like makes her louder. So you're going to name it without judgment and just say, I just don't need you right now, right? It's not like we're trying to like put a blanket over her and try to like ignore her, right? It's like, oh, you're present and that's fine, but I don't need you right now. Another thing that can be super helpful in kind of routine in avoiding the spectator is creating a mental transition. I've got a podcast episode called the 10-Minute Unwind. It is all about giving yourself 10 minutes and just really allowing your brain to relax from your day, whatever your day was. If your day was running around with little kids, or if your day was, crazy corporate meetings, or all the school drop-offs and the pickups from activities and things like that, like whatever your day was, grounding yourself in a routine to really calm yourself and allow yourself to actually enter into time with your husband, that is going to help in kind of letting the spectator calm down a little bit, right? Because if we're just entering immediately in, the spectator is like, I have so much to monitor. I have to make sure this is okay because we are so stressed right now and everything's been going on and like we're not relaxed at all. And I need to monitor it to make sure that we do this fast enough, right? If we alleviate some of those things, the monitor is going to be able to take a back seat because she's like, oh, I don't have to monitor anything. She's actually in a good place right now. She's actually ready to enter into sex, right? You can see, again, I think it's really helpful to kind of think of her as another person, just like sitting in your brain. And we can just tell her, oh, we don't need you right now. And this is also where, surprise, surprise, I'm going to talk about scheduled sex, okay? This is where scheduled sex with like intentionally anticipating it can really, really help. Because if you are dreading sex, right? If we've scheduled sex and we're dreading it, your spectator she's already working overtime right now. She's been working overtime the whole week that you've been dreading it. But if we are scheduling sex and we are intentionally anticipating it and we're preparing for it, like date night when we were still dating our husband before we were married, like, and we're like thinking about what we're going to wear and we're excited and how are we going to make it special, those kind of things, the spectator gets to take a little back seat because she's not needed. All right. So spectatoring is one of the biggest reasons why it is so hard to stay present in sex. So I hope that learning this will help you to then enter in more fully into sex and be able to be even more present. Thanks so much for listening. If you have ever gotten any value from this podcast, could you do me a favor really quick? Go into the podcast app that you are listening in, and if it gives you an option to rate and review, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us so much in reaching new listeners and spreading the word about this podcast. Thanks so much for listening.